Good evening. As we begin the
final steps,
right? We keep saying this final steps, but you know what? It feels good to say it every time. Kuf Zayin Amid Aleph at the Mishnah. We've got a few announcements to make. First of all, we are finishing up this Masechta tomorrow night.
Yep.
The rest of the Daf Yomi world will finish it up on Friday, but we will be Messiahim and make a big celebration and party out of it on Thursday, May the 7th. So reserve on your calendars, Thursday, May the 7th, right here in Kahal Yereim. We are going to be having special guests. The Bayit Daf Yomi Shiur will be in attendance, and they're a fun crowd, right? So they're that's where the action is, right here. And if you'd like to sponsor it to show off in front of the guests, right? This is your opportunity, right? Show everybody how it's done at Kahal Yereim. So many sponsors would be appreciated. The more sponsors, the better the better the food.
Yep,
so yeah,
absolutely.
Let's pour it on.
Absolutely.
So 7:15 at night, Thursday, May 7th, before we learn. So that'll be wonderful. That's going to be amazing.
Beautiful.
And then, right after that, I was deciding which one to come first because it's really after we make the Siyam, then we start the new Masechta. But we're doing it the reverse. We're starting the new Masechta Sunday morning with a brand new flyer representing the brand new Masechta. Starts Sunday, May 3rd, which is a great way to start your week. Start at the beginning, new Masechta. It's large, 140 something blot, but it's fun. It's going to be good. And we received our official mascot. The official mascot of the Daf Yomi. This young lady is unnamed as yet. If anybody would like to sponsor this cow, so her name doesn't become delicious, right? It's known as steak and ribs and all the different parts. If you are interested in sponsoring, right? This is what it's all about. This is high tech. This brings it all into real life. So. So this is, I was very, it's like, you see, like when you see the pieces of the cow, it's like seeing, if you've done the Masechta before, it's like seeing celebrities, right? I saw the Abu Mesam and the Omesam, and you're like, wow, that's great stuff. The trachea and the esophagus is here. It's all here. It's great. So this is going to be very exciting. And so I'm looking forward to getting into that. And let's get into tonight. Tonight's daf is sponsored by my father, Mr. Loiterman, Ilu Nishmas, my maternal grandfather. That's my mother's father. Right, my mother's father. This sounds like Maseches Yevamos here for a second, right? My mother's father, Avram Dovber ben Ephraim HaKohen. My mother's also Bas Kohen. Yeah, that's an interesting phenomenon that I have. Both my parents are Kohanim, right? So
the kids are Kohanim.
Yeah, so my kids are Kohanim. Yeah, my whole family Kohanim. Makes a bar mitzvah very difficult to give somebody an aliyah, right? Then when I did my lady, we had my bar mitzvah on Thursday, Thanksgiving. There was one Kohen aliyah and no opportunity to split it up, so that was that.
So you gave him first aliyah, and then you gave him your second son maftir.
So there's it. Well, there was no maftir on a Thursday, but yes. But anyway, his yortzeit is on the 13th of Iyar. May his neshama have an aliyah, right? And so let's get going. Here's the Mishnah. Mishnah, so we delayed long enough for Mr. Bernstein to arrive. That's how we know we're late, because we haven't started, right? Perfect. Here we go. Harei alai. The person says Harei alai yayin. Person, everything we were talking about. What happens if a person makes these vague, ambiguous statements? What is his intention? He says, I'm going to bring wine. He doesn't specify how much. Lo yifchos shlosh lugin. He has to bring at least 3, because there is no such thing as a korban that's offered with less than 3. Shemen, if he says I'm going to bring oil, lo yifchos lug. He can't bring less than a lug. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi says shlosh lugin. It's also going to be 3 lug. And we'll explain why he holds that way. Pirashti, if a person says, I specified how much I was going to bring, but I didn't write it down, and now I don't know how much I was going to bring, yavi ke yom meruba. He has to bring the amount of wine that one would bring at the day that one brings the maximum number of korbanos, because that's the maximum number he probably would have guessed. We'll see how much that is. Tana Rabban, our rabbis learned. Do we say it now? Should I say what it is now? It's not that complicated, right? We know we'll see when we get there. Tana Rabban, our rabbis learned. Ezrach, the pasuk says, Kol ha'ezrach yaseh kacha. when it comes by bringing wine for the korbanos, it says all of the naturally born Jewish folks should do such. It means that everybody who is Jewish can donate an offering of wine. So v'kama, how much can he bring? When he says that, shlosha lugin, he can bring 3 lugin. I'm just going to grab a tissue. Sorry about that. So shlosha lugin. Amen. Yosef, how do I know that he can bring more than 3 if he wants? We said the minimum was 3. So Talmud Lomar, it says Talmud Lomar yihi yeh. Extra word yeh, it shall be, which says that there's there shall be more if you want. Yochel yifchos, you might think that I can bring less. Also, Talmud Lomar kacha, it says no, like this, can't be less. Yeah, can be more, kacha can't be less. So 3 is your minimum. Next, shemen, if he says oil, lo yifchos milug, you can't bring less than a lug. Rabbi Omer, shlosha lugin. Rabbi says it's got to be 3 lugin. So, b'may kamiflagi, what are they arguing about? Amrua Rabbanan kamei Rav Papa. So the Rabbanan explained it before Rav Papa. Bedun mineu minah, bedun minah v'okim basra kamiflagi. It's the old dun minah minah argument. What is dun minah minah? Dun minah minah is that if I learn one item A from item B, how much of the rules of item B do I transfer over, right? So do I say, I've learned something from B, so that also applies to A, but I'm going to apply the rules of A to A's circumstances? Or do I say, no, once I've learned it from B, everything about B applies to A as well? Here's how it works. Rabbanan Savri, the Rabbanan hold dun mina umina. What happens is, right, that you're going to learn the idea that you're allowed to bring oil from the fact that you can bring wine, but the rules are going to be different. How so? Ma mincha misnadvin, avshem and nami misnadvin. We're going to say that, how do I know that you can bring oil as a sacrifice? Because I can bring wine as a sacrifice. How do I know I can bring wine as a sacrifice? Because the pasuk said, remember we just brought that pasuk that said, Ezrach, I can bring wine. So now I know that I'm allowed to bring wine. How do I know oil? From wine. So now, umina. But once I learn that, ma mincha belug, I take a look at, I say, well, how much is a, I'm sorry, I got it backwards, I got it wrong. Sorry, we're learning it not from wine, we're learning it from the mincha, from a mincha. Just like we know that a person can make a donation of a mincha, because the pasuk says at the beginning of a yikra that you can bring a donation of a mincha. So it's just like we're supposed to be able to bring a donation of a mincha, so to oil I can make a donation whenever I feel like it. And also then we're going to learn umina. Now we're going to learn that since I learn oil from a regular mincha, I also learned the amount from the regular mincha. Ma mincha belug, when I bring a mincha, how much oil do I bring? We said 1 lug for an isara, we always bring a lug. So af shemen belug, so therefore if I'm going to bring oil, it stands to reason that it should also be a lug. So everything I'm learning, when I'm learning item B, in this case item B, the oil from item A, the mincha, all of the laws of B are going to come from A. I can bring it, and I can also have to be the same amount. The Rabbi says differently. Dun minav oki basra. No, you can learn something. You can learn that B exists because of A, but then the rules of B are their own thing. So he says, ma mincha misnadvin. We're going to say that just like a mincha, you can donate af shemen nami misnadvin. I can also donate oil, voki basra. But now that I know that I can bring oil, how much oil? That has nothing to do with a mincha. We're going to say kinesachim. It's basically a liquid. So therefore, oil being a liquid offering, we're going to compare it to other liquid offerings. Ma nisachim, when it comes to wine, how much wine do you bring? Shloshes lugin. It should be 3 lugin. So af shemen nami shloshes lugin. So therefore, since it's a liquid offering, we're going to say that all liquid offerings come in the volume of 3 lugin, so therefore oil should be 3 as well. So therefore, even though we learned the idea that you can bring oil from a mincha, the amount doesn't come from mincha. That's what this don mina and dun mina v'okim basra comes up several places at Shas. We'll see it again. Amar lehu Rav Papa. Rav Papa says, no. Imi mincha gamar la Rabbi dikliyama lo pligi don mino mina. No, that's not the argument. I'm going to tell you that if the source for oil was the korban mincha, Rabbi would agree that it would be 1 lug. That's correct. But Ella, Rabbi me ezrach gamar la. Rebbe doesn't agree that the reason you know that you can bring oil comes from the mincha. He says the reason you can bring oil comes from the word ezrach, which is the word that we used for wine. So therefore, he says, how do I know I can bring oil? Because I can bring wine. And how do I then, therefore, from learning oil from wine, how much do I bring? then I bring 3. He's not saying that I learn oil from mincha and then I have a separate amount. He's saying that it's consistent, but I'm just learning it from wine. Amar le, Rav Huna, Brei de Rav Nasan Rav Papa. So Rav Huna, the son of Rav Nasan, says to Rav Papa, Umi matis amar hachi, can you say that? How that he's going to learn that you're going to learn oil from the word ezrach, which is what we learn from wine. V'hatayim, we're a brisa. Pasuk says by a mincha, it says korban milamid shemisnadvin shemen. That the extra word korban tells me that not only can I bring a korban mincha, but it says korban mincha. I bring a mincha or other items as a korban as well. Now we used that word korban yesterday to tell me about bringing wood as a korban, remember? So this is now also, I can also bring oil as a korban. V'kama, how much? Shoshes lugin, 3 lug. Time out. Manch masla damar shoshes lugin. Who's the one who says 3 lugin? Rabbi, that's Rabbi's opinion. V'kamaisi milemi korban. He doesn't bring it from, he doesn't learn it from ezrach. He learns it from the word korban, which is by mincha. So therefore he doesn't learn it from the wine. So Amarlei, Tanya, you're right. If there's a Bryce, I guess I'm wrong. Okay, wrong. I like when the big wing around says, Tanya. Okay, I was wrong. Okay, good. Peirashti, he says, okay, I said that I was going to bring a certain amount of wine or oil, and I forgot. So what does he do? Yavi yom meruba. He brings the amount that you bring on the day of the maximum amount. Tana, we learned, ki yom tov harishon shechag. The day that you brought the most korbanos was first day of Sukkot. Shechalios b'Shabbos, that falls out on Shabbos, because we have all of those korbanos, and so therefore we're going to bring the nesachim. All of the total amount of wine that you're going to bring is 40 lug of oil and 140 lug of wine. That's quite an amount, because you different amounts that you total up for the different types of animals. That's what it comes out to. Says the Mishnah. Harei alei ola. Person says, I'm going to bring a korban ola. Then yavi keves. He's going to bring a sheep. Okay. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Why? Because we're always saying that if you don't specify, you bring the smallest one that you can. Right. So it's going to be the smallest animal. It's going to be an ola. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, O Toro ben Yonah. You know, you can bring a bird. Bird is also an ola offering. And so therefore, it's cheaper.
Dove.
Huh?
It's a dove, right?
Yeah, yes, a dove. That's right. Dove. I thought you said a dove is a bear, right? Now you're getting confusing, right? A dove is a bear. Bear is a. Okay, I don't know. Anyway, Peirashti minabakar. I said I was going to bring from large cattle. The enio de mapirash, but I don't remember what I said. Yavi par. So he's going to have to bring. So he's going to bring a par ve'egel. He's got to bring both a bull and a calf, right? Because and that's male, because those are the 2 possibilities that he can bring. Mina behema. So why does he have to remember what he says? I specified. Now he's got to bring every possible one. Right? When you say when you don't specify, you bring the cheapest one. When you do specify, but you forgot, you've got to bring every possible one, because that could have been when you had.
Don't say that.
Yes. Well, don't forget. Say, write it down. So therefore, if you say I don't remember what I did, you've got to bring every type of large animal, which is an adult male animal and a calf that's male. Why? Because an ola is always a male animal.
Remember, the poor people should be careful. A poor person.
Not an ola.
A poor person should be careful with what he says. To make sure he doesn't forget, because he can't afford everything. So he has to be careful with what he says or offers.
Right, yes, he does. Okay, so now, Peirashti ve'eno yodea ma peirashti. So sorry, mina behema. So he said, I'm going to bring an animal korban. So now he's going to open up the possibilities. Ve'eno yodea ma peirashti, but I don't know which one I said. So now he's got to bring all the possibilities. Yavi par ve'egel ayil seir gediva taleh. Now he's got to bring a bull, a calf, a ram, and a goat, and a sheep, and a kid. Right? Those are all your possibilities. But all male, because it was an ola. Peirashti v'ino dema peirashti. So he says, I said I was going to bring an ola, but I didn't remember which one. So then most of them Torah and Yonah. Now you got to bring the birds too. Right? You got to bring the birds and the animals. Harei toda ushlamim. So if he says, I'm going to bring a toda and a shlam, or a toda or a shlam, not and, but or, yavi keves, he's going to bring a sheep, because he's going to bring the smallest one that he can bring. Pirashti min bakar, ve'niodema pirashti. I said I was going to bring a cow from the cattle, but I don't remember, not a cow, but a cattle, and I don't remember which one. Yavi par upara, he's got to bring a bull and a cow, egel ve'egla, a calf and a female calf, because shlamims and todas can be female, right? Shlamim. Okay, good.
Sorry,
see, it's very good.
Yep. Sorry.
We will remember that in Ola, right?
You're right.
Okay. Min ha-behema, if he says an animal video, dea mapi rashi, and I don't remember what I specified, now he's got to bring everything. Paru, para, egel, ve'egla, ayil, ve'rechela, se'ir, u'se'ira, gedi, u'gedia, tlet, v'talia. Right, he's got a bull and a cow, calf and a calf, what do you say in English? Calfness?
Calf.
Right? Calf, male one and a female one, and a ram and a ewe, a goat and a goat and a goatess. A ewe is a female goat, is a female ram, and a sheep and a female sheep and a kid and a female one. A kid is a baby goat.
What's his name?
A lamb.
Lamb is a baby sheep. A sheep and a lamb. Okay. Harei shor. Person says, I'm going to bring a shor, an ox. Yavihu unisachav b'maneh. So he's going to bring, by specifying, he's going to bring a maneh. That's going to be the amount that it's going to cost. Okay. Egel, if he says he's going to bring a calf, Yavihu nesachav b'chamesh. Then all he has to bring is 5 sloim. A maneh is 25 sloim. So it's smaller, you have to bring less with it. If he says ayil, if he's going to bring a ram, Yavihu nesachav b'shtayim, then he has to bring for the cost of that. Remember we were talking about how much they cost, right? So this is how much they cost. An ayil, you have to bring two sloim, and a keves and a sheep, Yavihu nechasav b'sela, 1 sela for your sheep korban with everything that comes with it.
Is there not concern of inflation?
Apparently not, right? That seems like they're pretty stable. Prices seem pretty stable. That was a good question. Yeah. But I think the reason why is because they had the official gold standard, right? The coins that they had were gold of the value of that coin, right? There wasn't like this coin represents gold, right? So they couldn't slide the inflation. This was a piece of gold. It had the value of a dinar because it was gold. That's why the coins, older coins, were worth less than newer coins because they got worn out, right? And some people would shave little bits off of it, right, in order to, right, still has the value of a dinar, can still spend it, but then do it enough times and I can save up an extra dinar or two here or there, right? If you're crafty. Shor b'maneh, if he says I'm going to buy the ox b'maneh, so then Yavi b'maneh, he's got to buy the ox for the maneh, chutz minasachev, and he's got to spend extra money on the other. Means he's got to buy a more expensive ox now, because that's what he said. Egel b'chamesh, he said he's going to bring a ram for 5, Yavi b'chamesh, he's got to bring the ram for 5, the calf for 5, chutz minasachav, and that's not going to count. Then he's got to pay extra for the other nesachim that go with it, the mincha that goes with it. Ayil b'shtayim, if he's going to bring the ram for 2, Yavi b'shtayim, he buys the ram for 2, chutz minasachav, not counting the other parts of the korban that go with it, the oil, etc. And keves b'sela, the sheep with 1, then he has to bring it Yavi b'sela, chutz minasachav, it doesn't count. Meaning, if he says I'm going to bring the sheep, then 100 is all inclusive, then the money is all inclusive. But if he says the ox itself is going to be 100, then the ox has to be 100, and it's not all inclusive. You have to pay extra for everything else. Shor b'maneh. Okay, so now, what if he says an ox for a maneh, v'hevi shnayim b'maneh, and instead he buys 2 oxen for the same price. He buys half price oxen too. It was a 2-for-1 sale, and he buys 2 skinny ones. So what lo yotza. That's not good, because he said he was going to bring 1 big one, and 2 little ones are not sufficing because he never brought a big one. Even if each one was almost a maneh, right? It doesn't count, because he said he was going to bring one that was a maneh, and he didn't. So that doesn't work. Shachor v'hevi lav, and he said he's going to bring a black cow, and he brings a white one. Okay? Love on Vevi Shachar, he brings a white cow, and he says I was going to bring a white one, and he brings a black one. Gadol Vevi Katan, I'm going to bring a big cow, bull, or whatever it was, and he brings a small one, Lo Yotza. That's no,
right here.
Right? That's no good. That is a small cow. Right? Lo Yotza. You're not Yotze in that circumstance. You didn't bring what you promised. Katan Vehevi Gadol Yotza, but if you said you're going to bring a small one and you bring a big one, Yotza, that's okay. Right? So Rabbi Omer lo yotza. Rabbi says no, not so. You're not yotze. And we had mentioned that in the past, right? We had talked about that because Rabbi says it's more a murim, more that you're bringing on the base on the mizbeach. So it's not what you said you were going to bring. Okay. Fine. Velo pligi. Right? The argument, right? This when we said right at the beginning of the Mishnah, we said that Tanakama and Rabbi Eliezer had argued that if a person says I'm bringing an olah, so that one said you bring a sheep, one says you bring birds. They're not arguing. Well, sheep are not birds. How could they not be arguing? Mar kiasrei, umar kiasrei. Each one is going according to their location. In one place, a sheep was cheaper than birds. It's all the matter of whether they're common or not. In the other place, birds were cheaper than sheep. So therefore, they're not really arguing. Tana Rabbanan, our rabbis learned, Harei alai ola. Person says, I'm going to bring a korban ola besela, and the cost of it is going to be, if this ola is going to be a sela lemizbeach, then yavi keves, then you should bring a keves. Right, because he said a sela. Why? The price of a sheep is a sela, so that's what he means. If he says that he was going to bring an animal or he was going to bring a korban that was worth a sela, and he didn't make it clear what he was going to bring. Now he's got to bring all possibilities. So yavi mikol davar shekarev besela legabi mizbeach. So he has to buy anything that you could buy for the value of a sela to bring, not just a sheep, right? Then he's got to be in doubt that maybe he could have purchased other things as well that would have added up to a sela, and that he has to take that as a possibility as well. Okay, like can you bring lavona? You could bring those kinds of things that you could add in flour. Pirashti, then the next part of the Mishnah says, he says, Pirashti min habakar, I specified a certain type of cattle, but I don't remember, so now he's got to bring the different types of cattle that could come as an ola, which is a parva egel, a bull and a calf, male calf. So am I. So why? Why do you have to bring both? Why doesn't he just bring a bull? Either way, right? Because we said, if you promised a small one, you could bring a bigger one. So why does he just bring a bull and you're fine? Why do you have to bring both? So Hamani, whose opinion is this? Rabbi, this is Rabbi's opinion. To Amar, if you promised a small one and you bring a big one, that's not okay, because you didn't bring what you said. So Rabbi, well, if this is Rabbi, so then Ema Seifa. Remember, the rest of the Mishnah continues. Shor b'maneh. Then if you said sure for a maneh, v'hevi shnayim, you bring two, b'maneh lo yotza, right? You bring two for that maneh, you're not yotze. V'afilo zeh b'maneh chaser dinar, v'zeh b'maneh chaser dinar, even if each one is almost a maneh, but it doesn't quite reach it, it doesn't count because you didn't bring what you said. Shachar v'hevi lavan, if he brought a black one, he brings a white one. Lavan v'hevi shachar, he said a white one, he brings a black one. Gadol v'hevi katan, if he says he's going to bring a big one and he brings a small one, lo yotza, all those circumstances, you're not yotze. But a katan v'hevi gadol yotza. So if it's a small one and then you bring a big one, then you are yotze. Well, whose opinion is that? That's the Rabbanan. Okay? So then it says Rebbe, Rebbe says lo yotze, you're not. So now, what's going on in this Mishnah? Reisha, the first part of the Mishnah is Rebbe's opinion. The Seifa, the end part, is Rebbe again. And the Rabbanan in the middle. Reisha v'Seifa Rebbe, u'mitziasa Rabbanan, and in the middle it's the Rabbanan. The answer is in. Yeah, that's exactly what's happening in the Mishnah. First part is Rebbe, then it goes into the Machlokas, meaning Reisha v'Seifa Rebbe. The beginning and the end is Rebbe. U'mitziyasa Rabbanan, and the middle is the Rabbanan, and I'll explain to you why that makes sense. This is what's going on in the Mishnah. It starts off with Rebbe's statement that if you promise to bring an ola, you have to bring both the little one and the big one. And then it says, Davar zeh machlokas Rabbi ve'Rabbanan. That statement about what you have to bring is a machlokas between Rabbi and the Rabbanan as follows. And then it brings the Rabbanan's opinion and Rabbi's opinion so that you know that if you hold like the Rabbanan and you say you're going to bring an ola, you only have to bring just the bull. Next, Tanan Hasam, we learn the Mishnah. I have to stop saying next every time we go to another piece. I don't know why. It's like become my habit over the last several weeks. I don't know why. So if you're at home going, I cannot stand when he says next or okay. Tanan Hasam. Just say it. Tanan Hasam. We learned in a Mishnah over there.
Was it also Rabbi when we were looking at Menachos? The opinion
Yes.
says that you have to bring one and two.
That is correct. And we said it was the same opinion, right? And we said, why do you have to say they argue it the same thing? And the answer is because the Kmitz is the same size, but the Murim are different sizes. So therefore, we have to know it in both cases. But yes, that's exactly right. Right. Tana Rabbanan, rabbis learned. Shisha l'nedava. We discussed that in the Beis HaMikdash, they had collection boxes. They were called shofros. They were shaped shofros. They put the money in, right? And they had 7, there were 13 of them in total. And they would put 6 of them were for donations, were for donated things, okay? So, Keneged me. Who established these 6 boxes? What is the point of them? So, Amar Chizkiah says, Keneged Shisha Bati Avos HaKohanim. I'll tell you why they had 6, right? They were representative of the 6 families of Kohanim. The Kohanim were divided up into 24 groups. They each served for a week at a time, and they all came together on the Sholosh Regalim. So there are 24 groups of Kohanim. When a group of Kohanim came to the Beis HaMikdash, they would divide up into 6 families, 6 groups, subgroups, and each of those subgroups would get a day of the week. So what they did was they put these 6 collections out, and then if there was a particularly busy day that day, so then they would wind up doing sacrifices all day long based on what people were coming in. If there was an empty day, then they would go into these shofros, take money out, buy olos, and bring those. There's a huge advantage of bringing olos.
What do you mean by
That means nobody was coming to Wednesday. People were at work, so nobody was coming to the Beis HaMikdash to bring their shlomims. Right. So therefore, it was kind of slow. So they didn't want the mizbeach doing nothing. Mm-hmm. So they went and they bought olos with the money that was collected in those containers.
So it was dead. It was not busy.
Yeah, exactly. Right, quiet
Rainy
day.
day or something.
Rainy day. Yeah. Right. Now, there's a big advantage to doing that because the skins of all the olos go to those kohanim. Mm. Well, if you were spending all day doing shlomims, you don't get that. Well, I guess you get meat, right? But these people were getting rich off of the olos. They said, time out. It's not fair. Why do you get all of that? We get all of this. It's not fair. So what they decided was that Chachamim tiknu lahem Chacham, the Chacham established she'sholom zeh im zeh. In order to keep the peace for everybody, they had 6 different containers, and they said the animals that are brought in each of these different will divide the money up evenly amongst the 6 containers, and as the offerings are brought, so then the skins will get divided evenly amongst everybody by dividing the money evenly amongst everybody. Okay, so that way each Beis Av would be able to take from only their shofar, right? Each Beis Av would be able to, and that way they would not overuse and get more than they're deserving. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, I'll tell you why there's 6. It has nothing to do with that. Mitoch she'hanedava meruba tiknu lahem shofros merubin kedei shlo yisabshu hamos. Well, what happens is there was a lot of donations. So if you didn't have many tzedakah boxes, what would happen is they would fill up the box and then people would take as they needed. So what would happen is you'd always be taking the money that was on top, which is the new money. The money that's on the bottom would stay there for a long time.
If you're doing the money from top, if you're doing the money from top of the tzedakah box, it's not like stealing?
No, they're using it for tzedakah. Yeah. Right, they're using it for tzedakah, right? They're not just taking it. Mm-hmm. So, but the money on the bottom is going to stay there. So apparently it could get moldy and ruined. So therefore, they didn't want it to get stuck on the bottom. So they made multiple tzedakah boxes so that they'd be able to reach down into the bottom and get the bottom portions. Mm-hmm. Okay? Z'iri says, no, I'll tell you why they had 6 tzedakah boxes. Keneged par ve'egel ayil ve'kir. The answer is there were 6 different types of animals. They had bulls, they had calves, they had rams, they had sheep, they had goats, and they had kids. So therefore, right, anybody who was going to bring a particular type of animal wanted to donate would put it into the container for that type of animal. Okay, so the Rebbe, this must follow Rebbe's opinion. Why? Damar katan vehevi gadol lo yatsa. Why do you need a separate one for a bull and a calf, or for a ram and a lamb? The answer is because if you promised a small one, right, you can't bring a large one. Otherwise, all you would need is a ram. I said, I promised a lamb, put it in the ram one, and that would be enough. Nope, can't do that. It's got to be separated.
You might dodge the ram, though.
Dodge the ram. Ubar Pada Amar Bar Pada says, Keneged haparim v'ha'elim. The reason why they had these was because of the bulls, the rams, hakivasim v'hasirim, the sheep and the goats, right? So they didn't specify adult ones or small ones, so this is not Rebbe's opinion. That only brings us to 4. V'hamoseros, the 5th one, was for the extra money that comes from animals. Let's say somebody said, I'm going to buy a korban for $100. He gets there, it only costs them $80. So the 5th one was for the extra money, right? The hama'a, and the 6th one was for the ma'a, which was the kolbon. What is the kolbon? When people would have to bring their half shekel, right? People had shekels. Where do you get a half shekel from? 2 guys would go in together and they'd make a half shekel. Now the thing is that when you would bring a half shekel, so then the value of the half shekel is like a little, in order to split a shekel, you have to pay the money changer, right, a little bit in order to split your shekel into half shekalim. So therefore, everybody who brought, if two people got together to bring a 1 shekel, instead of bringing each half shekel, they have to give that extra kolbon, that extra little bit of money, to the Beis Hamikdash. That's the money they saved on the money changer for dividing. So they have to bring that to the Beis Hamikdash. It goes as a donation also. So the 6th one was for that extra money.
The half shekel is its own coin?
The half shekel, it sounds like there was a half, there must have been, correct.
Nowadays, you go to shul on our Yom Tov, you have this big coin which is half shekel.
Right, well, they're half dollars.
Right?
They're actually half dollars, because we don't have shekels, but yeah. So, Kulu Kechizkiah lo Amri. Nobody holds like Chizkiah, right? Going through, everybody gave their idea. Chizkiah was the one who said that they were keeping the peace, right? So every got their own. Nobody likes that one because Lantzuye lo Chashinan. They didn't fight. That's not true. I can't believe that's the reason why. Tikol Chad v'Chad Yomi Ka'avid, because they were doing their service on a different day anyway. Right? When were they? They weren't even going to see each other to fight, I guess, maybe, or it was clear which one you were doing these offerings, they're doing these offerings. That's the ones you get, that's ones they get. So it's not an issue. Rabbi Yochanan lo Amri, they didn't follow Rabbi Yochanan's opinion, right? Because la pushe lo chashinan. The money doesn't go bad. When the money's at the bottom, it's going to go bad. When have you seen that happen? Okay, so don't worry about that. Kizeiri lo Amri, we don't hold like Zeiri, who said that it was the different 6 types of animals, because ki yichidai lo mokit. We don't want to say, we don't say it's Rebbe's opinion, because he's the individual. We don't want to say the halacha is like Rebbe. Ki bar pada nami lo Amri, we don't want to say it like bar pada, because mosaros, the extra money to purchase extra korbanos, that if somebody pledged too much, kulu nami mosros. So all of the money, what was for the other 4 for, right? The bulls and the that was when you said, I'm going to bring a bull, and you had extra money, you put it in there. So all of them were for extra money. Why would you need one specifically for the extra money? And furthermore, the one for the kolbon, right? Nami l'shkolim osla. They didn't have a special collection for that. That went where the shkolim went. So wherever they put the shkolim for the service of the Beis Hamikdash, that's where this kolbon went to. So they didn't need a special container. Titania is going to brisa. Leichan kalbon zeholech. Where did this extra kalbon, this extra amount of money when you brought the half shekel go? L'shkolim, it goes to the shkolim. Divrei Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Meir says, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Lenedava. It went to the shofros to be able to put it into the nedavos of the tzibur. Okay. Ushmuel Amar, I said, okay again. See, I said we're going to do that. Ushmuel Amar, Shmuel says, I'm noticing, it's like the things when you like notice speech. Shmuel Amar, that somebody makes fun of you in a perm spiel. That's what happens when you start realizing. Shmuel Amar, if you're a Rebbe, that's Shmuel Amar. No, I don't. Now that I've got a high school, I've got to worry about it. Shmuel says, "Keneged Mosar Chatos." The answer, he says that the 6 of them is for the following, and this we had seen before. The reason why we had 6 extra ones is for the following: Mosar Chatos. We have a circumstance if somebody separates, right? That he says, "I'm going to bring for a korban chatos," and he separates money, and then it went cheaper. So now he's got extra money. That extra money goes to the container. Moser Asham, same thing. If I says to bring an Asham and the price went down, now he's got extra, goes into the Asham container. Moser Asham Nazir. Also, there's one separate one, not just for a general Asham, which is for sins, but an Asham Nazir, which allows the Nazir to become able to start his counting. I think the Asham, he's starting his. Is that starting his count over, or is he finishing his count? I'm not sure which one of those that he brings. Moser Asham Mitzvah, also the extra money involved in purchasing a Asham for somebody who's Tzaras, so that he can become purified. Umoser Minchas Chote, also somebody who was planning on bringing a Mincha Chote, the flour offering of that elevated offering that sometimes if you're richer you bring more, right? So he has extra money, put that one in there. Umoser Asir Seifa Shel Kohen Gadol. Also, if the Kohen Gadol brings extra money for his 10th of an Ephah offering that he brings every day, so that goes in there as well. For Rabbi Oshia, Rabbi Oshia says, I'll tell you what the 6 were for. Keneged Moser Chatos. It was one, like I said, I agree. It was for the extra money for the Chatos. Moser Asham. Moser Asham Nazir. Moser Asham Torah. Those 4 I agree. But the next one is Moser Kinin. It's for money that you pledged for buying bird offerings, and you had extra. And the 6th one was Moser Minchas Chote. I agree that the 6th one was for the Minchas Chote. Right? He's just basically disagreeing about the 10th of an eighth of the Kohen. He switches that one for the birds. Ushmuel my time alo Amar Rabbi Yoshua. Why doesn't Shmuel agree with Rabbi Yoshua and say that it goes for the birds? Because Kinin Tanole Reisha. Because in the section about the 7, remember there were 13 total, in the 7, one of the containers was the collection money for birds' nests. So therefore, that's where you would put that, regardless of how much money it really costs. You put all of that money in there, and so therefore that's not an extra box. Rabbi Oshia tani velo tani kinin. Rabbi Oshia says he learned the Mishnah that he had the list of this first 7, and he doesn't teach that kinin was in the first ones. So that's the question, right? Did Rabbi Oshia have a different text of the Mishnah where the first 7 there was no box for the nests? V'atani Rabbi Oshia v'tani kinin. It says that Rabbi Oshia says in a Tosefta that there were 13 boxes, 13 shofros, and one of them was for the nests. Chad lekinin v'chad lemoser kinin. So he says, so what's going on? So he says the answer is one is for the nests itself, one is for the extra money that was left over that you would put in there from the nests. So they would separate that out. For Rabbi Oshia, my time alone, Shmuel. Why doesn't Rabbi Oshia agree with Shmuel? He holds that the extra money, that if the Kohen brought too much money for his mincha, for his daily mincha, so it wouldn't go as a donation. It had to just become spoiled and ruined. You just throw it away. The Tanya is we learn in Raisa. Moser minchas nedava. If I have leftover money that I apply towards a regular mincha that I'm donating, Mosar mincha yirkov. The leftover money goes to get to spoil. So my kamar, what's going on in this brisa? Amar Rav Chisda Harikamar. Rav Chisda says like this: Mosar minchas chote nedava. Right? It says the mosar of a mincha of a person who's bringing a korban chatos. So that becomes money that is then used to purchase gifts to bring korbanos in the Beis Hamikdash. Mosar asir sa'efa shel kohen gadol yarkiv. But if it's the leftover for a mincha that the kohen gadol is bringing, then that gets spoiled and that does not get brought. Okay, so Rabba Amar afilu mosar asir sa'efa shel kohen gadol nami nedava. Rabba says no. Even the 10th of an eighth of a kohen gadol also gets brought as a gift. Ella mosar lachmi toda yirkov. It's the leftover of the bread of the korban toda. Right, you're bringing the korban toda, you had to buy breads. If you had leftovers, that gets spoiled. Okay, so that is beplugda. That is all dependent on an argument. Mosar sisi for Kohen Gadol, the 10th of an ephah of the Kohen Gadol. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Nedava. Rabbi Yochanan says it becomes a donated offering, and Rabbi Elazar ben Amar Yerkov. Rabbi Elazar says it spoils. Okay, so then if it spoils, obviously you don't need a container for it. So meisvei. So we ask the following question: Mosar shkolim. Right, let's say person takes a whole bunch of money and he says, this is going to be for my shkolim, my half shekels that I'm going to be bringing. But they turn out that the money is more than half shekel. So chulin, whatever's left over is non-sanctified. It just doesn't work. Mosar Sisrei Efa, the extra that if a Kohen says, I'm taking this money and I'm going to buy the Asiris Efa that I need, Mosar Kine Zav and Vikine Zavos, or extra money for purchasing the nests for somebody who's a Zav or a Zava, Vikine Yoldos, or nests for some woman who gives birth, Vichatos Vashamos for a Chatos for an Asham, Mosrei Helenadava, the extra goes as gift offerings to the Beis Hamikdash for the Mizbeach. My love, Mosar Sisrei Efa Kohen Gadol. Are we not talking the 10th of an Efa? It says the 10th of an Efa extra goes to the Kohen, goes to gifts for the Mizbeach. Are we not talking the extra 10th of an Efa that goes to the Kohen Gadol? No. We're talking about Mosar Minchas Chote. We're talking about the 10th of an Efa, that the Saron that was brought for the Minchas Chote. That, we already said, is established, that goes to the base, that goes to the Mizbeach. Amar of Nachman bar of Yitzchak. Nachman bar Yitzchak says, Mistabra kimandam mar Mosar Sisrei Efa Kohen Gadol Yirkov. It actually makes sense that the opinion that says that the extra amount, that if a Kohen Gadol brings extra for his korban, then it gets ruined, it goes to rot. Why? Detanya, because we learned in Brisa. Lo yasim aleha shemen v'lo yitin aleha levona ki chatos hi. Right? You're not supposed to put oil, you're not supposed to put frankincense on a minchas chote. Why? Because it's a chatos. Amar Rabbi Yehuda says, he kriya chatos, that korban is called a chatos, vein acheres kriya chatos, and nothing else, there's no other mincha that is called a chatos. What other korban are we talking about? The answer is the Kohen Gadol's one is not called a chatos. Uteuna livona. Therefore, the Kohen Gadol's is going to need frankincense. Umedeina kruya chatos. And if it's not called a chatos, and we know that the halacha by the chatos is the extra gets given as a donation to the Beis Hamikdash, Mosra Yirkov. It must have a different rule as to what gets done with its leftovers. The leftovers are done differently, and they are left to spoil. Okay, next. Did it again. Shor zeh. I don't know. I'm telling you, it's like notice it. I'm not going to unnotice it. Shor zeh ola. This ox is an ola v'nistaev. and it gets a blemish, right? Sorry, here we go.
Oh,
There goes the ear. Boom.
Blemished. Okay. Im ratza yavi bidamav shnayim. If he wants, now he can sell and buy he can buy cows. He can buy 2 new cows.
How much are selling that one for now?
Huh?
How much are they selling it for now?
It's a good question. I would assume that it doesn't really reduce the value of it as meat that much, right? The ear doesn't matter much. Right. So therefore, right, you can buy, if it was a very expensive cow, right, Wagyu cow, right, now I can sell it and buy 2 regular Texas beef cows for the same price, right? Shnei shvarim elu ola. If a person says these two oxen are olos v'nistavu, and they get a blemish, ratzu yavi b'dmehem echad. He can, if they want, he can now take the money and buy 1 big cow. And Rabbi says, no, you cannot. They were 2 before. You've got to do 2 now. Ayil ze ola. This is a ram. V'nistaiv, and it gets a blemish. Im ratzu yavi b'dmei keves. If he wants, he can not buy another ram. He can buy a sheep with it, right? Keves ze ola. If this, he says, this sheep is an ola v'nistaiv, and it gets a blemish. So then im ratzu yavi b'dmei, he can now buy a ram with it if he wants. He doesn't have to bring the same thing. For Rabbi also, Rabbi says, no, you cannot. You can't switch. Says the Gemara. V'hamar reisha. Why do you have to keep asking this issue of if I have a shore, right? So I'm not allowed to bring 2 with that 1. We already said the Mishnah above before. Shore b'maneh, v'hevi shnayim b'maneh lo yotz. If you said I was going to bring an ox for a maneh, you can't bring 2. So of course you can't. If you had an ox that was 1 got a blemish, you can't bring 2. It's the same case. So the answer is shor zev v'nistoiv shani. It's different when person says this ox. Right? So he says this ox. So then it's different because why? When I said I was going to bring an ox, so I have an obligation now to bring a big ox worth of money. So if I bring 2, I'm not doing that. But in this circumstance, I said this ox I'm bringing, right? Now this ox is no longer eligible. Since I said it's the old achrayas question. This ox was my obligation. I don't have to bring this ox anymore. So therefore, I'm taking the money. Now I've got to make a new donation. It's a new donation that I'm buying with the money. I can change what I'm bringing, and now I can bring 2 instead. That's why it's different. Shnei shvarin, if I have 2 oxen, and he says they are elu ola. These 2 oxen are an ola, v'nistaivu, when they get a blemish. So then ratzu yavi b'nei echad, if you want, like we said, so these are the ones. Now they're ruined. So now my original nidava is now canceled. So now I can do whatever I want. So if I want to bring 1, I can bring 1. I don't have to bring 2. If I want to bring, Rabbi says, no, can't do that. You got to bring whatever it was. You can't bring 1. My taima, why does he hold that way? Mishum tahava legodol vehevi katan. Because he had a large animal and now he's bringing a small one. V'afa gav dinistoiv, even though it got a blemish and it's not the same one anymore. Lechatchila lo shari Rabbi. Rabbi says lechatchila, don't do that. Best not to change. Whatever you had, bring again. V'liflug nami bereisha. So why does he argue in this case where he has 2 shvarim and he says and he wants to bring 1? Why doesn't he argue also the case where he says I had 1 and now I'm going to bring 2? Why doesn't he argue in that case too? So Rebbe Akula Milsapal, you're right, Rebbe does argue on that as well. He argues on both cases. He was just being polite. He let the Rabbanan finish, and then he argues, right? The Rabbanan said, if it was 1, I can bring 2. If it was 2, I can bring 1. He says, no, you can't. Right? But his no, you can't is going on the entire piece. He says, lechatchila, whatever, if you had one animal, you should bring with 1. If you had 2, you can bring 2. That's it. Teida, you should know that's true to Katani, because it says at the end of the Mishnah, ayil ze ola, if it was this ram is an ola, v'nistoiv, and it gets a blemish, ratzu yavi b'demo keves, if he wants, he can bring a sheep, keves ze ola ola, if he says this sheep, so then v'nistoiv, it gets a blemish, ratzu yavi b'demo ayil, he can bring an ayil, Rabbi Yosef, and Rabbi says, no, you can't. Well, why not? The answer is because Rebbe says, lechatchila, don't change. Right? Even though the one you promised is not here anymore, so it doesn't matter now, you just have a pile of money. No, but it's better don't change it. Okay. Iboilahu, Here's the question, right? Mimina lemina mai. Question is, what do the Rabbanan hold, right? If you're able to change from one species to another. Okay, so I had one species, it gets a blemish. Can I change to another species? Tashma, come and listen. Shor ze ola, person has one shor as an ola, v'nistoiv, and he gets a blemish. Lo yavi b'damav ayil, you're not allowed to bring a ram. Okay, so aval, maybe b'damav shneilim, but he can bring 2 rams, right? Sounds like the issue is, don't bring one lesser animal. But if you bring 2 animals of the value of the larger animal, that's okay. Rabbi Oser. Rabbi says, nope, that's Oser. You can't. Why? Shlefisha ein bila. Because in that circumstance, you're going to wind up having 2 mincha offerings because you have 2 animals, and they're not mixed together. You're not able to mix them together into one utensil, and so therefore, he's not bringing what was he promised. He had 1 animal, now he's bringing 2. Rabbi doesn't like you doing that. Shma mino. So you can see from here, right, that the Chachamim are clearly saying that if I had 1 ox, I can change it to 2 rams. So changing from one species to the other is okay. Okay, well now if I could change from one species to the other species, so ihachi, if that is correct, my area tray, then why does it have to be 2? Afilu chadnami, why can't he just change from an ox directly to a ram and be done with it? The answer is, Bahab b'nistoiv l'Rabbanan lo shani l'hu ben gadol l'kotam. Because the Rabbanan, they say they don't make a difference between the large one and the small one. As he says, in second, if an ox gets a blemish, he can bring from its money even a small one. Right? We said in the Mishnah, right? If he says this is an ola and he gets a blemish, he can bring 2 shvarim, right? Even each of them is going to be, even though one ox is bigger, oh, I see what he's saying. Okay. If the Rabbanan are specifying that it was an ox, right? I had 1 ox, I've got to bring 2 rams. Well, if you're deciding that I can always change from one species of animal to the other, that's not the problem. Then why do I need 2 rams? Why do I have to go? If I have 1 ox, I should be able to get 1 ram. And if you're going to tell me that if I promised a large animal, I can't get 1 ram because that's not going to be the value of the ox, that doesn't matter. Because we already learned that the Chachamim allow you to downgrade from a higher level animal to a lower level animal. So that's not going to be the issue. So, Trey Tanaya Liba the Rabbanan, the answer is there's an argument according to the Rabbanan, right? That one opinion says you can't downgrade the value of the korban. So if I have a shor, I have to go with 2 rams, can't go with 1. The other side says, no, even if I downgrade, that's acceptable as well. Okay, then in Rabbi says, Rabbi Oser, Lefishin Bila, Rabbi says you can't bring 2 rams because I can't mix the korbanos because it's 2 different, now it's 2 korbanos, 1 before, now it's 2. Taima, it sounds like what Rabbi's saying is, Taima de'in Bila, the reason is because it's now 2 korbanos and I can't mix them together. So ha yesh Bila, shari, that means that if I would have been able to mix these 2 together, then it would have been okay, right? That's the big issue. That's not, but we learn in a Mishnah. Ayel ze olaf, person has a ram, v'nistoiv, and now it gets a blemish. Ratzu yavi b'damav keves. If he wants, he can now bring a sheep. Keves ze olaf, he says, I had a sheep. This is a sheep. V'nistoiv, it gets a blemish. Yavi b'damav ayel, he can change it to a ram. For Rabbi Ozer, Rabbi says, no, you can't. Now, why not? Because it's going to be ultimately it's going to be 1 offering anyway, and even though you're changing species, you're still now only having 1 offering. Rabbi should say, that's not a problem. So the answer is, you're right, but it's traits na'ilib the Rabbi. There's 2 different opinions as to what Rabbi holds. Right? One says that, in fact, you can't change from one species to the other, and the other one says, no, you can. It's only a matter of multiple offerings. Uba tahorim, now if you have an animal that does not have any blemishes, so then egel, if it's a calf, vehevi par, and you bring a bull, Keves, if he has a sheep, vehevi, or a lamb, right, I guess. Vehevi ayil, and he brings a ram, which is larger. Yotza, you're fine, right? You're allowed to, you're allowed. So, stama kirabanan, this goes according to Rabbanan, who holds that you can always upgrade, right? Rabbi says, no, you can't. You can't bring the larger one to take care of the smaller one. Ratza yavi bedamav shnayim. Then the next thing is that if, right, he has this ox and he gets a blemish, he can bring 2 smaller oxen if he wants. So Amar Rav Menachos bar Zvid, Amar Rav Menachos bar Zvid says in Rav, Lo shanu ela da Amar shor ze ola. This only works if the person says this shore is an ola. Aval Amar shor ze alai ola. But if he says I have an obligation to bring an ola, right? The only reason why the thou goes away is because he said this ox is an ola, but now this ox is dead. So now I just have money, so I can buy whatever I want. But if he said, I am obligating myself to an ola, so then hukba, so now he's got the obligation. Now he's got an obligation. You can't downgrade. You can't go from a large animal to a small animal. Okay, but maybe Vidilma alayla havio kamer. Maybe he's not saying I'm obligated to bring this and ola. Maybe all he's saying is I'm obligating myself to bring an animal, right? I'm obligated to bring this animal. This animal is really the korban, but I'm saying I'm going to bring it. So it's not really saying that if I don't bring this animal, I have to bring a different one. I'm saying I'm the one who has to bring this one. If you want to suggest that he's still obligated to bring it regardless, is this circumstance. Amar of Menachos bar Zvid, Amar Rav. Menachos bar Zvid says in Rav, Lo shanu ella de Amar shor ze ola. It's only if the circumstance where the person says this shore is an ola, right? So then inami shamar shor ze alai ola, or even if he says this ox which I'm going to bring as an ola, I'm going to bring it. So aval, however, he says amar shor zed v'damav alai ola. If he says this ox or its value I will bring as an ola, now he's obligated. Now he has to bring the same thing. So that hukba, and now he's got an obligation to bring an ox of this size, and he cannot change it. It's probably a good place for us to stop in the Mishnah, because we will be able to, right?
Bring it
Kuf Chasma Beis, and that gets us to, right? The Mishnah on Kuf Yud, so for the exciting conclusion.
Yes, indeed. Okay.
So that is our place.